Hey, everybody. So I guess it's Sunday evening, so that's awesome. I have this weird feeling that probably there were some Zoom appointments I was supposed to do today, but it was Sunday and I was quarantine Sunday fun day, and I was like, oh, I don't think I have anything to do today. So I'm puttering around the house an old person because I'm old. Cleaning. I'm making ginger ale at home, like from scratch. Who am I? I've baked bread again. I made sandwich bread. This is what I'm doing. Anyway, I'm not going to ramble. So we're getting ready for kind of an important week of starting to put some of the ideas for this paper kind of into a little bit of a form. And what I like to do before I draft, because I usually have 60 ideas and I don't really know what I'm doing. There's a bunch of stuff spinning around in my little squirrely head. So what I do is I make an outline, and I've tried to talk about outlines to kids for, what year is it? Yeah, a long time. And it's kind of everybody gets really focused on the visual layout of the outline. Where do I put the Roman numerals? Where do I put the little letters and the numbers and all this stuff? If it makes sense to you, it works. I'm going to show you my outline. I use this with the default settings on Word. So when I hit Enter and when I hit Tab, this is what I get. Okay, so I don't do anything fancy. So we're gonna go look at that right now. So let's take a trip to Fred's Word. Hey buddy, oh there it is. Yeah, let's share that right now. All right, so here we are. So this is my outline. So you'll notice just looking at it right there that there's a lot of words. I mean, I think the total outline is 427 words. And the reason for this is simply because I like to think through where my ideas are in the outline so I can kind of see what's going on. And so let me just kind of walk you through this really quick. I'm aware that you're literate, so I'm not going to read it out loud to you, but I will kind of point some things out. So in the intro, I have my parts. So there's A right there. My opening, I'm thinking some attention grabber from a disaster movie, or maybe some crazy thing about extinction, or maybe some, Twitter story, something about climate change in the media, something kind of catchy. Then a real brief, the next two right here, or the next three actually, B, C, and D, are kind of me contextualizing what I'm saying. So we have right here, let's go climate science really quick. Where did the greenhouse effect come up? Kind of trace the history. We have a term here, Anthropocene, right there. It's what some scientists argue that this era should be called, you have the Jurassic and the Triassic and the Permian and all of these things. They argue that this is the Anthropocene because this is the area where everything is basically impacted by humans. And it's debatable, but it's a term I want to use, so I'm going to define it there. Then I want to talk about the climate debate, how did this start, how does this go? And this BC here, this is not 6 pages. This is a handful of sentences. I want to think about where did people start talking about climate change? What does this term mean? What's the debate look like? Then I want to kind of set up what I'm calling here, the 21st century media landscape. So this is me just kind of the world that we live in. So this right here, this is just me thinking about what kind of stuff my reader needs to know before I can make my argument. Oh. Then I write some sort of idea about my thesis. You can read it right there. This is my rough thesis. This is really, it's kind of garbagey and crappy, but it gets my idea down as the 21st century progresses and climate change becomes the central issue of our time. There's a claim there. I don't like what I'm doing there because I'm making the assumption that it is so that'll have to be revised a little bit. As the 21st century progresses and climate change becomes the central issue of our time, the vast complex of media organizations that dominate the socio-cultural landscape will play a central role in both how climate change is perceived and how industries and governments deal with it. So in that thesis, I have to kind of show that climate change is a thing that people are talking about. Whether you agree or disagree is really irrelevant to my argument here. It's the fact that people are talking about it. It's becoming a central issue. People are yelling about it at each other. And that the way this debate happens is determined by various media outlets and organizations. and the impact, and that has two impacts: how we talk about it, and also what the government does with it. Like, so it actually has two kind of separate sections there. One is that I will have to show how the media determines how we talk about climate change, and then I'm going to have to show that the media also influences how we deal with climate change. And so those are kind of the two parts of that. Okay, that's kind of my sketch of my intro. If you look at this carefully, you will see that I'm not really sure what I'm doing yet. I know I need to kind of contextualize these things, but I'm not really sure how. Okay, then, so now these sections here kind of match what's in the intro. Like if you look at section 2 and section 3, like 2 and 3, these basically mirror what's happening in B, C, and D. So this is, so first of all, in 2, this is the science. So what I'm going to do here is basically give, like I said, like what's the basic facts? I use the word elements, you can see there, of climate science. I also made a note to be as non-controversial as possible. So I just kind of want to talk about like what do most scientists, as far as I can determine, agree on? What's the kind of picture? I don't want to be weird, and I don't want to get too alarmist. I don't want to get blamey. I don't want to get controversial. I just want to say, look, global warming, and so I want to try to keep it real superficial, well, not superficial, but real, like basic. I don't want to get too deep into the science, because first of all, I'm not a climate scientist. I'm an English teacher. So what I need to do here is kind of situate all this together in a way that just kind of says, this is the basic science. So I picked 3 things: global warming, rising sea levels, and extinctions, because we have good data on what's been happening. Now because this is the trick I learned actually, is that people don't have a problem with what's happened. What they have a problem with is when people say, because this has happened, this is what's going to happen. So we do know that average global temperatures have been increasing steadily. Okay, what we don't know is what that's going to look like going forward. We could just be in a warming section where for, a couple thousand years it warms up a little bit, then it kind of stabilizes, then it cools down. We've had little minor waves of heatings and coolings over recorded history, so maybe that's it. So that's the line. So I just want to talk about what science can say about what's happened with those 3 things to today. Like, have we had an increase in extinctions? Okay, great, we have. Are the sea levels rising? In some places, yes, we can record that. Is the temperature increasing? Yes. So we can show that. Now, like I said, that's non-controversial because that's showing what has happened. Now, what's going to happen, I'm also not going to discuss here whose fault it is, because that tends to also be the second thing. The two kind of, as far as, just in case you're wondering what the debate looks like, this is the debate. Who's causing it? Like, why is it happening? And what's going to happen? That's where the tension is. So I don't want to talk about who's causing it or what's causing it or what's going to happen. I want to talk about, look, this is stuff that's happened to our climate up till today that's most scientists agree on. So that's that little thing. Quick, pretty much a long paragraph. Then 3, I just want to talk about climate science in 2 channels. I call it the media portrait in 2 channels. I want to talk about Fox and MSNBC, because Fox tends to skew to the right, and MSNBC tends to flip to the left. And I want to look in a non-evaluative way here. Section 2 and section 3 are still just presentational. This is the science. This is what scientists say has happened in these 3 areas now. In the media portrait, it's just like, this is how it's presented on Fox. This is how it's presented on MSNBC. I gave some little things. Fox tends to attack or be difficult or aggressive with, or be hard on, as I say here, be hard on pro-climate change politicians, especially your Al Gores and AOC. They're kind of hard on those people. Whereas MSNBC, as I noticed here, they usually put this squarely on anti-Trump rhetoric. It tends to be really hard on Trump. So you'll see I'm trying not to be very biased here at all, even though I have my personal opinions. I'm not trying to be biased. I just want to say, here are 2 24-hour news channels. That's what they are. And here's how Fox presents it, and here's how MSNBC presents it. I couldn't cover all media because that's a book. So I just picked those 2 channels because they're very they tend to be at absolute odds with each other. They tend to go very much the opposite way. So that's why I picked those two. Then the next thing, section 4 there, as you can see, is social media, the algorithmically mediated meeting place of the 21st century. So I want to look at social media. So I have this article by this bunch of scientists. The main one's name here is Mavro Dieva, is the person who did it. And so he's the lead on the article. It's like 6 people. But they have this idea of how media is soft power in like affecting discourse on climate change. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Facebook. I'm talking about engagement and anger and disinformation and memes, because like that's the big problem, because social media is all about engagement. They want clicks, they want likes, they want shares, they want retweets, they want comments. That's what social media thrives on, is engagement. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about memes and disinformation. Then Twitter, same thing. I'm going to talk about Twitter is similar, but I'm going to talk about tweet fights, because a lot of times we have tweet fights and meme wars. So we have like somebody tweets something and somebody else tweets something back at them, and it goes back and forth. So I have like Grunberg and Trump, like Greta Grunberg when she was named, you know, like she went back and forth with Trump, and he would say something and she would say something back. It's this little tweet war, which was really silly. Then you also have like the right, like the young right. So like Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. These are like younger people that are on the political right, and they kind of really attack the environmental left, especially AOC. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of their particular targets that they go after, because she's been fairly outspoken about these green things. So I'm going to talk about how social media, so it's basically like section 3 is kind of how these 2 media outlets present climate change. And then section 4 is kind of how climate change is functioning in social media. Now I need to be careful, this is a note to myself, in the social media section, that I don't get distracted by too much discussion of how social media functions. I don't need to talk about the fact that they drive engagement in order to kind of determine your behavior so that they can sell ad space to businesses and then get you to click on those ads to follow and buy things. I don't need to talk about the commercial functioning of social media. I need to talk about the idea of how engagement and how the algorithm impacts your thinking. My Twitter looks very different than yours. My Facebook feed looks very different than yours because of what I engage with and who I am. So there's that. And then finally, section 5, this is the role and responsibility of media in the Anthropocene. So this is my main point. Like, and I have some questions here because I don't know the answers to this. So I just wrote questions for myself. What should media outlets do? Do media outlets have a responsibility beyond their commercial goals? Like, I know that Fox and MSNBC and Facebook and Twitter need to make money because they're for-profit businesses. But do they have a purpose or a responsibility beyond that to actually provide information that can help us make good choices? Or should we not expect that at all? Then, if they don't have a responsibility to do stuff that's more than just make money for their shareholders, does that mean that they're doing harm by following that profit-driven imperative? Like, you know, I mean, if they don't have a responsibility, but are they then doing harm? And then what should we do about that? Does the government, do the people, do we have a responsibility and a right to limit the damage that they can do? And this is a real question. Like, okay, let's say we have a responsibility to do something about it, but do we have the right to say to a private business, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't say this, you can't be this, because it does harm? Like, does the government, do we want to give the people, do we want to give the state the right to do this? So there's a lot of questions because TBH, between you and me, I don't know. So there's my outline. I know I went fast, but I tried to leave it stable so that you could read it. So here's the first part. And if you guys want me to post this, just let me know, and I'll post this, but hopefully you can read that. I'm gonna stop sharing right now. Okay, that was my outline. That form, I don't care. So when you see the assignment that I'm fixing to post, and it says submit an outline by, I think, Thursday, just break your paper down the way it needs to be broken down. And if you don't know, then ask yourself questions. Because those questions, like when I read them back to you, my brain is like, oh, okay. And it's waking back up. And that's an interesting paper for me to think about do these media outlets have a responsibility? And if they do not have a responsibility, do we have a responsibility to regulate them? Because listen, they're not going to regulate themselves. They're going to create value for their shareholders. That's no judgment. That's not me being some sort of radical leftist. That's what a business does. A business does what is necessary to increase profits. But do they have a responsibility to do that in a way that's ethical? Is it just about driving engagement? Or do they need to be informative in a way that actually can benefit society as a whole? Or can they do both? That's another good point. I didn't even think about that. That's really cool. Anyway, that's a good question. I mean, you know, and I don't mean to say I don't mean to be like all, ooh, like their purpose is to create profit. It's just their purpose. It's what a business does. You want to make money. Yes, you want to provide a service or goods to your consumers, but you got to make money because you have to stay open. If you're not making money, your doors close. So, but do they have responsibilities beyond that? And if they don't, do we have a responsibility to regulate them? And if we have the responsibility, do we have the right? Is that legal in a democratic society for the people to take control over independent businesses? It's complicated. I don't know that I'm going to have good answers to all of those questions because I'm just one person. So we'll see. We'll see what happens this week. So look at the assignment. It says final essay outline. Look at it. Write me an outline. If you had, and submit it. I'll look at them. I'll talk to you. If you had a writing conference scheduled today, just hop back in there and reschedule for this upcoming week, you know what I'm saying? And I'll be cool about it. I'm sorry, I just took a little Sunday time to be an old person and putt around by myself. Anyway, please let me know if you have any questions. I hope that this video and kind of walking through my crazy process helps. I hope you see how I kind of broke things into the stuff the reader needs to know, and then how that kind of builds to whatever argument that I'm going to make, and you can see how you work. My way is not the only way to do this, and this paper that I'm showing you the outline for will probably change. But some of those strategies that I have there, hopefully they'll be useful to you. Like I said, if you want to see, if you want me to post the outline as a resource, I'm more than happy to. Just let me know. Anyway, the feelings that I have for you, they're called love, because you guys are my favorite people on this planet. Besides, well, you know, the ones that I made anyway, and maybe others. But in terms of people that are, you know, students, you're the best ones in the world. You guys, my 156 students, are the best. Other people, they're jealous of me because you're amazing. Love you. Stay safe. Get outside.